In order to better understand how writing is taught in U.S. context, both online and in the classroom, this lecture will introduce to you how the field of rhetoric and composition developed in America. Specifically, how this field, often housed in the English department, but not always, studies the relationship between rhetorical theory and writing. Though rhetoric has many definitions, one of the most common is, quote, the art of persuasion. As many of you may know, this study is very old, starting in ancient Greece. Though rhetoric existed even before Plato, Aristotle was the first to systemize the study of rhetoric, calling it, quote, the faculty of observing in any given case the available means of persuasion. In ancient Greece, through Roman times, these available means were most often associated with oral speeches. If you wanted to get something done, at least as a member of the elite, you had to make a speech. Aristotle created several heuristics, or tools, for methodically studying these available means, to aid his students to become better speakers. The most common is often called the rhetorical triangle, where Aristotle breaks up the communicative act into three appeals: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos makes an appeal with the speaker's character, reputation, or credibility. It's how we portray ourselves to our audience. Pathos appeals through emotion or relational bonds. It is how we build empathy with our audience. And logos appeals to reason, or how we get our audience to think in similar ways as us. Rhetoric continued to be a centerpiece to education in Europe, though often defined in many different ways. Though I have to skip over many centuries, the study of rhetoric arrived in America during the colonial era via a British philosophy called belletristic rhetoric. Thinkers or philosophers like David Hume, Hugh Blair, and Adam Smith began to apply rhetorical principles to written text. With the rise of the printing press, the written word became the primary means of persuasion. Most of our country's founders studied this kind of rhetoric, and the American Revolution was fueled by the written word, not just speeches. For example, the Declaration of Independence. After American independence, though, the study of English slowly became the study of literature, and rhetoric became less visible in American education. By the turn of the 20th century, students were learning to write mostly by reading literature, but professors in the universities, like Harvard, began to complain about the poor writing of college students. Alexander Bain, the then president of Harvard, developed an entrance exam in English focusing mostly on errors, which led to the first composition class required by all incoming first-year students. This quickly became the norm in American universities. And to this day, most incoming students in the university have to take this first-year course. Many have argued that this type of instruction focused mostly on style, or fixing errors, which is only a part of the traditional canons of rhetoric that developed during ancient and medieval times. And just for your information, these canons are 5. 1, invention, or coming up with new ideas, thinking of what to write. 2, arrangement, or structuring your ideas. How do you arrange the different things you have to say? Style, how you present those ideas to your audience. Memory, being able to speak naturally and impromptly. Delivery, making use of nonverbal cues. Most early composition focused on applying the canon of style to writing, ignoring the rest of the canons. By the mid-20th century, though, professors began to wonder why focusing on style wasn't improving students' writing. and they began to draw on rhetorical theory to teach more aspects of writing. Many claimed that invention was actually the most significant aspect of rhetoric. We don't just write to communicate. We use writing to think, problem solve, and come up with new ideas. We rarely know exactly what we want to write before we sit down to write. We come up with new ideas as we actually write. Several paradigm shifts occurred as a result of this resurgence in rhetorical theory, most of which are still very important to teaching writing today in the U.S. First, we see writing as about process, not just about the product. In other words, awareness of how to write is just as important as being able to fix the end result. So now, many instructors teach the different stages of writing from invention to delivery. Second, writing instruction became more focused around the audience. Students produce better writing when they have a real sense of who they're writing to and why they're writing it. And thirdly, writing became a critical thinking tool, a way to analyze subject matter and think through different ideas. As a result, writing instructors spend more time helping students with writing process than actually correcting their drafts. So that's the history of rhetoric in America in a very small nutshell. Obviously, the topic is much more expansive, and I encourage you to take a look at a few of the resources that I've posted in Moodle. And think about how these rhetorical approaches are the same or different from your own experiences, both as a student and an instructor. I also would like to hear about your own experience with rhetoric in Poland and which aspects you've encountered. How do Polish people define rhetoric? Thank you for your time, and I hope this gives you some ideas about how we treat writing instruction in America. I will look forward to discussing these ideas with you in our discussion board and also learning about different ways you approach writing instruction in the classroom.